Good evening. I'm Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. As some of the most prominent influencers in our great state of Michigan, you have the power to help protect our democracy. And you can do that by sharing information about our elections and the importance of voting. Voting in Michigan is now more convenient than ever. You have the option to vote early in person, which began statewide on Saturday, October 26th and continues through Sunday, November 3rd. And more than 250,000 Michigan citizens already took advantage of this new voting option during the first weekend. You can also vote by mail and track your ballot online to see when it's received. And of course, there's always the last day of voting in person on Election Day, November 5th. The choice is yours. But with just 1 week left until November 5th, that last day to vote, it's time to make sure you have a plan to vote. Your voice is your vote, and your vote is your power. Embrace your power and make sure your voice is heard. You can find out more about voting options and all other election information at michigan.gov/vote. Thanks.
What's up, Michigan? My name is Arabia Simeon, and I'm the founder of Politics on the Go. Welcome to the SOOO Simple Early Voting Virtual Party, brought to you by Michigan Secretary of State and the Michigan Chronicle. During this virtual party, we'll provide you with all the resources you need to vote early this election season. You'll also hear from brilliant leaders in the civic and community engagement spaces. To start us off, I would like to introduce you to my civic tech company, Politics on the Go, aka POGO, our nonpartisan mobile app that's simplifying civic engagement for young voters.
Ready to revolutionize the way you engage with politics? Meet POGO. Born out of frustration with the traditional political process, our founders set out to redefine civic engagement for Gen Z millennials. We're changing the game of civic tech. POGO simplifies and personalizes civic engagement, informing the next generation of voters. Think of us as a Tinder for politics. Tell us what you care about, how much it matters, and we'll show you which candidates align with your values on the ballot. Swipe right on your faves. Whether it's a national or local election, POGO helps you vote informed every time. We're not just an app. We're a movement, bringing politics to your fingertip.
Welcome back, y'all. I'm here with our brilliant panelists, and we're going to talk to y'all about everything voting. Again, my name is Arabia Simeon, and I'm the founder of Politics on the Go, aka POGO, and we're simplifying civic engagement for Gen Zs and millennials. Before we get started into our questions, I would love for our panelists to introduce themselves, say your name, and what organization you represent. And we're going to start with Ebony.
Hey everybody, I'm Ebony JJ Curry, senior reporter from Michigan Chronicle. Super excited to be here today.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Caprice Jackson, Deputy Organizing Director with Next Gen America.
Hi, my name is DeJuan Bland. I am lead organizer with Moses.
And Poncella.
Hi, I'm Poncella Hardaway. I'm Executive Director of Moses Action in Detroit.
Cool. Thank y'all all for being here. I'm super excited to moderate this panel. And again, we're going to talk all things voting and resources. We're going to get started by just talking a little bit about young voters. As you all know, I'm building an app that's targeting Gen Zs and millennials because what we've seen is that young people are the growing voting bloc, but our voter turnout isn't as high as we want it to be. So I would love to know, what challenges have you seen 20 to 35 year olds face when it comes to trying to vote, and how can we overcome these barriers?
In the journalism world, I could say, I think for me, what I've realized is a lack of knowledge of, who these elected officials are and what they stand for as far as policy, how that can really help their bottom line, meaning their everyday lives, and how that can really impact and affect them. And I think a lot of times when it comes to miseducation, we have to just simply educate on a level where they can understand, where it's just regular conversation. No big buzzwords, no big fancy rhetoric, but simply, hey, this is important because when you wake up on a Tuesday, this could impact you. So I think breaking it down, simplifying it in that way, in terms of educating our younger generation that I represent. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I would love to also hear from Caprice. I know you work a lot with this demographic as well.
Absolutely. And I'll say just being on the ground, being on college campuses, and listening to what different students are saying. A lot of students were telling me that during this election cycle, they didn't plan on voting, not only because they didn't know what was going on, but they felt like nothing related to them. So I always talk to younger people and I ask them, do you want to own a house when you graduate from college? They always tell me yes. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're voting for people where we can have affordable housing, right? Because no one is going to graduate college with a $200,000 or $300,000 job. So we have to make sure that we're putting the people in office that care about the issues that are most important to us. Everyone cares about student debt relief. Everyone cares about affordable housing. Everyone cares about things like marijuana legalization. So when you're checking to see who you want to put in office, make sure these people are resonating with you and what ideas you believe in. Once we have those candid conversations, they're a little bit more interested in saying, okay, well, let me get registered to vote. Let me do my research and see who's actually on my ballot this year so I can put that person into office.
Yeah, I love that. And something that I found through Pogo as well, similar to what you're talking about, is Gen Zs and millennials are policy over political party most of the time. So policies are really important to understanding what's on your ballot, do these candidates, what does these candidates actually stand for? This actually brings us to the next question. I would love to know why you think it's essential for voters, especially young voters, to participate not only in national elections, but also local elections. And how can that shape Michigan's future? I would love to hear from you, Poncella.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. So I think that's a really good question, and I feel like there's a lot of power. I don't think people understand the power we have in voting. I was just looking at an election in 2016 where there was 277,000, and I'm going to say Black voters from 18 to I forget the age, but starting at 18, who are eligible to vote, who did not vote in 2016, but yet the election was decided by 11,000 votes. So there's a lot of, we don't understand, and we always say your vote matters, but when you look at the numbers, if we show them the numbers to show them how much power they have in terms of casting their ballots, and in really taking the time to understand that this is about their future, right? And how do they understand their own power, that there is power in your voice? And I think what was said earlier about the issues are really important. Like if we want to change our future, we got to start looking at policy. Politics is just policy. We got to change policy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Dewan, I would love to hear your experience.
Yeah, I would say, politics and the way that we're governed isn't just something that happens to us, although it feels like that for a lot of people. And a part of it is they're not engaged, not just in the act of voting, but in democracy in general. And so one, I would say voting is one of the steps that they should participate in, but then there's so many things that they need to do after the election. People have voted in so many city council people and never sat down and talked to the city council person. And until folks do that, especially young folks, it will always feel like the government is something that's just happening to them.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. And that's actually something I felt as a voter as well. And one thing I wanted to also mention with this, with the local elections, is something I've noticed that young people don't even know what some of the offices or positions on the ballot actually mean, right? I remember having a conversation with one of my little sisters, and I was trying to explain what a comptroller was to her. And literally, it took about 2 days to explain that. And that's with me, who can actually, explain it in a way that people can understand. So I can imagine what it's like to be a voter that may not have the resources that I have. And this kind of leads me to the next question. I actually want to start talking a little bit about how we get our news, right? So it's been reported that Gen Z millennials get majority of their news from social media platforms. I would love to hear, what do you think the role of social media is when it comes to influencing and motivating voters in terms of turning out in the elections, but also influencing their decision making in terms of who they're voting for. Ebony, I would love for you to kick us off with this question.
Absolutely. As you know, we are in a society, in an age where instant gratification is the thing. Everything is at our fingertips. We're forever on our phone, in our screens, have so much screen time. And on my iPhone, it tells me my screen time each day. So that's the thing. So I think it is inevitable that we'll get most of our information via social media. The thing with this is, I always urge, as a journalist and also as a Gen Z millennial, that I'm right in the cusp, that you have to be sure that you're sourcing. Consider the source. So a lot of times my grandma will call me and be like, "Did you see this on Facebook? So and so died." Grandma, I know you did. You know, like let's Google and let's really fact check these things. And I think there's a lot of different areas we can go with that. So our immediate jerk reaction is to see something on social media, be it politics or not, hot news, hot button topics or not, and say, "Hey, is this a thing?" And I think what I advise, what I employ, is that when we do that, we go to Google and let's fact check it. Let's check it out on AP News or Michigan Chronicle. You know what I mean? Let's figure those things out. So to answer your question, absolutely, I think social media is has a huge impact on the news that we receive, on the political scheme right now, on the election cycle. But it's always, 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 always very important to fact check that stuff. You know.
Yes, it definitely is. That's definitely something we want to be able to help and support with through Pogo as well. Caprice, I would love to hear your experience working for Next Gen America. I know y'all have a huge social media following on Instagram and TikTok. What does social media look like for y'all? How does that help you organize?
Yes. So I can, number one, agree with Ebony and everything that she is saying. Next Gen does definitely have a huge following, as well as different influencers that we have as well that encourage our younger people to get out. But fact checking is what's going to make sure, or how we make sure that everyone gets the right information. When you look at different outlets like the Shade Room, Baller Alert, things like that. Yes, they are reporting on what's going on, but is it always accurate information? And then you also have to look at different news outlets that may be more so Republican leaning or maybe more so Democratic leaning. And that also plays a factor into what information you are getting. So everything is Googleable. I use Google as my best friend, and CNN is always playing on my TV or wherever I'm at. I'm making sure I'm looking at some type of newsroom. But also it's okay to look at different type of news outlets or social media outlets that may be Republican leaning, because you want to know what's going on the other side, right? No matter who you are supporting, you want to see what the other side is saying, but we also want to make sure that it's accurate information. I appreciate Next Gen for making sure that whatever we put out on social media, we're appealing to younger people and we're making sure that they understand what's going on. We're not just putting out a long article where nobody understands, right? A lot of times, a lot of information gets lost in a long, drawn out article, and people don't understand what different things mean. Um, I will just always say, make sure that you fact check and do your own research and use your own discernment in every decision that you make.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. I feel like I'm agreeing with everything y'all are saying on the panel. Speaking of fact checking and research, I would love to hear how you think Michigan voters can stay informed when it comes to learning about candidates, ballot proposals, and also making informed decisions.
Pogo.
Yes,
Go,
definitely
go.
download Pogo right now. Politics on the go.
Yes,
No,
shameless plug for sure.
yeah, shameless plug, shameless plug. But seriously, outside of Pogo, what other resources do you think young people can use to vote informed and to make sure that they're making educated decisions? And I would love to hear from you, Dewan or Poncella.
Yeah, I would say again, download Pogo. Outside of Pogo, there's other like tech bits that they can use. Ballot Ready is a great resource. Ballotpedia is something online. But then just to highlight the work of groups like Moses and Next Gen. There's so many in-person events people can come to have voter education. Just go on Eventbrite, mobilize, find an event near you. And then I will also encourage folks once they get voter education, just to understand that they're trusted messengers to their group in their own personal network. So take the information that you have and spread it along. And then I'm gonna say this, and shout out to Ebony as I'm also like a journalism major. Media literacy is something that we just need to help our folks with, so people aren't getting their information from the Daily Lunchbox or Joe Button, but actual credible sources.
Yeah, I would love for y'all to also touch on some of the events. You mentioned events. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm put you on the spot. I would love for you to talk about poetry and politics and some of the things that y'all do at Moses to help organize and educate people.
Yeah, so we try to do various events, public facing events to do voter engagement and education. So our event that's aimed at millennials and younger is poetry and politics, even though it's very intergenerational. Where we have local artists come and do relevant poetry to the subject matter that we're talking about. Um, and then also do political education during the events. One of the other events that we've been having is called Ballots and Brunch. So we organize with our member institutions, whether they be congregations, block clubs, just community leaders, to organize their community, their networks, to come and eat some good food, because people love good food, especially free good food.
Especially
And
brunch.
yeah, especially brunch, and do deep ballot education, and actually like equipping people to have conversations with people that trust their voice about the election. And we try to do it in a timeline where people have time to unpack the information that they have been given, and actually track the efficacy of the conversations that they're having. So that's some of the events that we had. We also do like candidate town halls, voter engagement town halls about specific issues or ballot initiatives, and then yeah, and I'm pretty sure Consuelo has some other things that I might be forgetting about.
So I think what Dewan laid out, of course, download Pogo, that's first and foremost. But there's all these other in-person events that Dewan has raised, I feel like are really important. I think your question about social media, how do we create the space for people to be comfortable and demystify the voting process? Just having conversations. It's okay, no matter what side of the issue you're on, creating that space where people feel comfortable and safe to have their opinions about issues and about candidates and about what's happening. So we're talking to each other. I just can't stress enough. Social media has taken up our lives in many different ways, but nothing takes the place of the kitchen table talking, you know, watching a movie and having conversations. Nothing takes the place. And so we have to create those spaces. And I feel like Ballot and Brunch and other things that we've been doing, where we call it online to offline organizing. You have the social media piece there, but how do you are creating an offline mobilization component? And that's been what we've been trying to do in this election, is where we bring people into spaces where they can actually feel comfortable talking about these things. And that stirs up their thinking about the issues in the election, right? And kind of plow through some of the clamor that we're hearing around these soundbite approaches.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to approach it. I personally believe that we need online as well as in-person events to help build that culture. And something that we say at Pogo is that we're trying to actually build a civic engagement practice for young people. So going back to your earlier point, Dewan, we don't want people to just, vote on election day, right? We want people to be participating in their actual communities, especially on the local level, and that involves volunteering, that involves working with organizations that do really good work in the community that you actually live in. So I would love to actually take the conversation a little bit in a different direction, but just going back to the original voting topic. what are some of the key differences between early voting, absentee voting, and in-person voting, and which options works best for young voters?
Can I go?
Caprice, of course.
So I will start off by saying that the last day to vote is on November 5th, right? And we have many different options, thankfully, in Michigan that we can do to get this done, right? We can go in person on election day. We can do our absentee voting by mail. And with voting by mail, you can either go in and drop it off into the post office, or you can go to a ballot box at early voting locations or at your city or county clerk and get that turned in. And then you can also do your early voting, like I said, between October 26th and November 3rd, where early voting locations are open every day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., I believe. I think that when it comes to younger people, we want to make sure everyone's making our plan to vote. But with younger people having so many different things going on in their lives, right? Whether you are traveling, whether you are at school, you have that advantage to take on that absentee voting or that early voting. I have a handful of people who have already been texting me asking, well, where is my early vote center? How can I figure out where my early vote center is? Because I'm ready to go in right now. Thankfully for the city of Detroit, their early voting started on October 19th. But if you want to make the decision to stand in line on election day, please make sure you are in line before 8 p.m. because as long as you are in line, you will be able to vote.
Yes, definitely make a plan for election day. I personally love to actually vote on election day because I like to feel like a freedom fighter. Um, and I can't feel that way through an absentee ballot, but you should definitely get an absentee ballot. And I know many states have permanent absentee ballot lists as well. So if you feel like this is something that you want to make the decision on, you can actually be a permanent absentee ballot voter. And then in terms of the last question, I actually wanted to ask y'all, what are some of the changes you want to see in Michigan's election system to better support voters, especially young people? And I would love it for Ebony to kick us off.
I think the conversation of talking about their everyday bottom line issues and educating policy, because as you mentioned, I think in our demographic, we're more so prone to wanting to know policies other than, who's married to who. You know what I mean? I think having those conversations early before all the rhetoric starts to happen and before all of the crazy campaign ads begin to happen and kind of taint our view of things, I think it is very necessary to one, point out what are our issues that we want to be tackled, and then two, to simply educate. So if we can get in front of that earlier rather than later, I think we will kind of be ahead of this curve. And also understanding that what young people are so important too, to really push this thing forward. So I think if we put that into consideration, I think we'll be much further the years to come.
One of the things I feel that the young people, they need to be familiar with people who are holding office. They need to have conversations with them. They need to be able to express, their lens of the world to these decision makers. I feel like to me, that's where democracy really lives in terms of having those relationships with their elected officials. I remember, I'll just tell a quick story. We were meeting with a bunch of young people at a church on the east side, and they walked out. They said, "We're not voting. We don't think this works for us." And so Dewan, he caught them in the parking lot and told them that, you can vote for the judges. And they said, "We can?" And they were like, "Oh, wait, we can actually decide." And we did a speed dating session with judges where they actually go from room to room. They taught us about who the players were. We didn't, it was a generational learning in that moment. And so I think the more we put them in front of these decision makers, they have experience, they have insights, and we want to be able to make sure they share. Even generational sharing and learning about these elected officials is really important. The one last thing I want to mention is that when we vote, we fought hard in 2018 and we fought hard in 2022 to change the voting laws in Michigan. So we want to make sure that people are able to even go They can research their ballot. Even if you get your absentee ballot and you decide you want to vote in the polls, you can take your ballot to the polls as your cheat sheet. You don't have to go into the ballot on the day of election and try to guess who you want to vote for. You can sit down with your family and friends. You can go over the ballot. You can create a plan by identifying who you want to vote for ahead of time. So when you go into the polls, the stress of trying to figure out what millage is there, you've done the research, and you can easily have a good experience in voting on election day. I just want to throw that in there as 2 cents.
Yeah, no, you make a great point, and I love that. I love the community aspect to preparing for elections. I think that's something that we all need to be doing more often, especially intergenerationally. So I would love to hear from you, Dewan, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would say, meeting more of our young folks in their classrooms. Outside of the point that a lot of folks feel like I don't understand civics or government after I get out of high school, even if you like loved your civics and government classes, it doesn't really get into the logistical part of voting, and so there could be a closer partnership with some type of like specialized curriculum, even if it is just during election season around the logistics of voting with our young people.
I
Yeah.
can agree with everybody. Actually, I always say when I hear people that say like I don't do politics, politics is going to do you regardless if you do it or not, and it does it to you every single day, right? And I think civic engagement is a big piece. Honestly, not just with young people, but with everyone. Just like we were mentioning earlier, some people don't even know what each elected official does. So I think if we start there and we do this in off cycles, because sometimes people feel like they don't want to vote because they only hear about people when it's time to vote. Do your research during off cycles, go to these community events where your elected officials, the people that you put into office, are hosting things. Get to know them, get to know what their policies are, get to know what they are supporting or what they are not supporting, and how that's impacting you and where you live every single day. And that way, when election time comes around, we already know, okay, this city council person didn't do anything for me, and I know that they said they were running on this platform. This governor didn't do anything for me. This sheriff didn't do anything for me. So now it's time to change the scope of or the political landscape and figure out who we need to put in office, who should we advise to run, right? Because we want to make sure that young people are also running for office as well as voting in these elections, and change the political landscape as a whole for everyone.
So, what myths or misconceptions make voting seem complicated, and how can we break down those um, cycles or thoughts to encourage more people to participate?
Um, I'm sorry, I don't mean to go first, but I'll say just being on the ground and my own experiences. I think that when you're looking at election day, people are thinking if they are not, if they can't vote by 8 p.m., that they cannot vote at all. So they tend to want to leave out of line and not stay. So please know, if you are in line before 8 o'clock, you can vote on election day. I also think people who may have been formerly incarcerated do not know that they can vote. I tell people all of the time, I've taken the time to walk through Wayne County jails and register people who are awaiting trial. So long as you are not serving a prison sentence, you are eligible to vote. And in Michigan, once you are released from prison, your voting rights are automatically restored. That means you can vote as a felon, you can vote on probation, on parole, in a halfway house. So long as you are a free citizen, you are able to vote. And I think that sometimes we take away a huge demographic of people because they don't know that they can vote, because they feel like they've been arrested before, something very small. You still have voting rights. People think that their voting rights are stripped away so easily and they just cannot get them back. And that's not true.
Mhm.
I think that's a great point. That is something I also tell a lot of my friends and a lot of people around me. And that's also going back to a lot of the questions that we talked about earlier in terms of systems change, right? An election system change. Things like that is important for young people to know because that goes into the policy issues that we care about. So I would also love to hear from you, Poncella, any thoughts that you have on this topic.
No, I think Caprice said what I wanted to say. I think that's something that we have to consistently tell people because that's a myth that constantly circulates every election. And we need to keep reminding people about that as long as you're not serving you're not sentenced, you are eligible to vote. Even if you're sitting in jail, you are eligible to vote. That's a right. We need to understand that we have a right to exercise our vote and our voice in Michigan.
Yeah. And one other thing, which I don't know if y'all would consider it a misconception or a myth, but something that I love to debunk when I'm talking about behavioral change as voters is the idea that there's off seasons, right? A lot of time in political conversations, we're talking about off seasons. Every election's only every 4 years, and that's a part of the problem, right? If we want people, especially young people, to build civic engagement practices, we have to show them that they should be voting in their local elections, even
100.
the ones that are happening on odd years or don't align with the presidential election or even the mayoral election, right? Like school board, judges. There are other elections on the local level and the hyper local level where we need people to actually be voting for. So that's something I love to bring into the conversation because I think a lot of the time people don't think about these things as a constant thing. Like Caprice said, if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you, right? And that means that we have to be engaged at all points of the year of election cycles.
100% Arabia. I'm telling you, when I'm speaking to younger people on the ground, yes, this is a very important presidential election, but your local and state elections are really what matter because these are the people that are making changes in your life, in your everyday life, right? So this is why you need to know who your city council person is, who your judges are, your sheriff, your mayor, your school board members. Like these are the people that are making changes that impact your lives. Figure out who these people are, go to their community events, find out what they are standing for because they're making the difference in your life.
I love everything that everyone said. I feel like I resonate with so many of the points. And I want to say thank you. Thank you all for joining me today. This panel has been very needed and insightful. I commend all the work that y'all are doing on the ground as organizers, as reporters, as leaders in the community. And thank you to everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed the panel. And don't forget to go and vote. And if you can, go and vote early.
Nah, bro. Look at you.
Oh, you got jokes. All right. I know you're not talking when I was you yesterday.
Bert, didn't I tell you to take the chicken out the freezer?
Chill, don't make me laugh. Ma, I swear I was gonna do it, but then I got distracted. I'm sorry.
I think it's because you always on your phone. And y'all just be laughing at those little TikToks. You know what? I hope y'all can put that same energy into voting when election day comes.
Man, she always tripping when it comes to voting. It's not like our vote counts anyway.
Nah, bro. My mom be on the same thing. But honestly, I feel you, because it's not like these politicians listen to us anyway. Or our vote is going to count. Because, you know, we're like young and stuff.
Yes, this is wild. Honestly, I'm not voting again until I see a politician that looks like me.
Nah, y'all out of pocket. Voting definitely matters.
Oh, look, we done activated Harriet.
Here you go on your soapbox.
Nah, y'all got jokes. But for real though, voting is important. It's how we determine who represents us, where our taxes go, how our schools are funded. Bro, when we don't vote, we have no voice.
I guess I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, but I don't even know where to start or who to vote for.
Exactly.
I actually heard of this app called Pogo that's simplifying that entire process for us. Think of an app that's trying to just present you the facts without trying to sway your opinion. Matter of fact, let me show you.
Oh, wow. That app is actually fire. Way better than, you know, social media and the fake news we get.
Yeah, it's kind of like a dating app. So you swipe right to save candidates to the ballot in your app, and you can see what candidates stand for and when and where you need to be on election day.
Bert, you still didn't take that chicken out the freezer?
The future of democracy starts with you. Download Pogo today and vote informed. Pogo, bringing politics to your fingertips.
I hope you enjoyed our early voting party. Don't forget to vote early or by November 5th to make your voice heard. Download the Pogo app today in the iOS store at Pogo Politics on the Go. Special thanks to the Michigan Secretary of State and the Michigan Chronicle. And thanks again for watching.